Vampires have really gotten a bad deal in modern media, and I blame Twilight. The books and movies that took the world by storm turned what were once vicious but regal, blood-sucking monsters into sparkling little pretty boys. Now, the makers of Vampyr aimed to turn around that image. It's a dark, gothic, and gritty take on vampires set in London during the 1918 influenza pandemic. This game actually became even more relevant when I played it, considering the current situation of the world. So is Vampyr able to restore honor to the vampire name? Or is it unable to bite its way into the spotlight? Let's talk about it. But before we do, just a quick reminder to please subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and if you want to see more Captain Sarge, remember that I do have a Twitch channel. I live stream all of these games that I play and review. Alright, on to the video. At its core, Vampyr is a narrative game. The main focus is to talk to the various characters in London, learning more about them and their relationships with each other. I really do have to applaud the developers here because they really did not skimp. If you encounter a character that isn't actively trying to kill you, you can be sure that they have an entire dialogue tree for you to explore. This is not something to avoid either as the player, since it's directly related both to the story and your character's progression. The more you learn about and connect with a character, the more experience they are worth. That's right, you earn the majority of your experience in this game through murderous vampiric blood-sucking. Now, there's a give and take here, since the more you do this, the more harm will be done to the district that the character lived in, driving it further into chaos. Similarly, people can get sick, which further lowers the state of the district and their experience value. Luckily, though, in addition to being a vampire, your character is a doctor, and so you can make and give people medicine to heal them. This is really all a cool idea in theory. However, I thought the actual execution of it fell just a little bit short. It felt like no matter what I did, giving everybody medicine, not eating some of the what I thought were the major players of a district, almost all of them fell into absolute chaos by the end of the game. And now, on top of this, I'm not really the biggest fan of long and drawn-out dialogue trees in games. It's cool at first, but this game was 22 hours long, and that got old. I just don't care. I didn't care to learn about these people and talk to them about how living through an epidemic was after a while. There's too much repetitive questions that you ask to every character. Now, the developers were definitely onto something here. And I think that if the game was maybe a little shorter and possibly more focused, that they would have knocked it out of the park. But as it is, all of it felt just a little bloated and inconsequential. Now, in addition to all the talking, Vampyr is also an action game, with vampire hunters lurking around every corner waiting to fight you. You have multiple abilities and damage types that different enemies have unique resistances and weaknesses to. The combat itself is pretty standard. You lock on, you dodge their attacks, then you attack, maybe you use an ability. However, it is janky as all hell. I played with a mouse and keyboard, and the game will change your target when you move the mouse. Even though I rebound the control, I changed it, still had no effect. So this makes fighting really borderline impossible if there's more than one enemy around you, because you're gonna move the mouse. Even if you try not to, it would just randomly switch who I was locked on to. And if you're not locked on, it's really difficult to ensure that your attacks are gonna land. In addition to this, because most of the XP gain is tied to eating people, combat feels unnecessary. You really don't get much experience from it, and it just happens all the time. Every corner you turn, there's another group of enemies to fight. And it's not that easy to just run past them. They're really good at getting in your way. So the fighting just felt tedious and unnecessary. There was no reward to it, and going through it was pretty janky. To its credit, when it does work, the combat does feel pretty solid when it is just you versus another character. But the shortcomings in the system really made it more frustrating than anything else. All of this adds up to a rating of about 3 out of 5 for the gameplay. The story of Vampyr is an interesting one. For some reason, the plague that's terrorizing the globe has mutated in London, causing some people who get it to turn into vampires. You start the game as a once dead man, waking up to learn that he is now a vampire, and you learn this when he instinctively feeds on his sister. It's a very powerful, strong opening, and does a lot to grip you. The whole narrative is very mysterious, because you're learning about what's going on with your character. He wakes up essentially with amnesia. He doesn't know who turned him into a vampire, or why, or how, and you want to find that out too. Unfortunately, after a few hours, this kind of disconnects, which highlights to me a huge flaw in the storytelling. A lot of the plot and world building is hidden within the many dialogue trees that you have with the citizens of London, and a lot of their conversation topics are locked until you learn more about them or find a specific collectible. And there's also collectibles with more information within them. But all of that is optional because it's hidden. You have to go explore and find it. So the plot will continue whether you've taken the time to talk to people or find those collectibles, whether you've done that or not. So this leads to, for example, a love story between your character and this lady vampire that honestly felt like it came out of nowhere. I thought they didn't like each other, but then in the very next cutscene, they're talking about how they love each other. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel earned. This happens with other things as well in the game. There's some revelations regarding the vampires in London, their culture, the plague, and they were revelations to me, but they rang a little hollow since when I found them out, it wasn't a revelation to the characters talking about it. Really, there was this disconnect between those two. Now, I know you could say, like, oh, well, this is your fault because you didn't meticulously go through all the dialogue options or find all the collectibles that the game offers. And I hear that point, I really do. But personally, I will never accept that as an excuse for what I consider to be poor storytelling. When you're presenting a game, the story should be able to stand on its own. I'm not saying you can't have collectibles or optional conversations, but I feel like those need to further flesh out the world and the story, not hold key plot elements and revelations. If that's where the main story is, then I think you failed to present the story in an effective way. So all this comes together to make the narrative a lot more confusing and unsatisfying the longer that it went on, which again was too long. This game took me about 22 hours to beat, and after about 12, I was done. I give the story a 2.5 out of 5. Now, graphically, the game actually looks and runs really well. The voice actors did a great job bringing life and character to their roles. Every character is voiced. They all do a great job. Really, the only complaint I have is that some of the character animations were a little excessive during conversations. Having a character kind of move around a lot and move their arms a lot, it does not really show them emoting. It's more distracting than it is immersive. That's a small complaint compared to the rest of the game. I mean, the shadow looks and blood effects, they look sweet. They're all pretty clean. The game runs fairly smoothly. There's really not much negative to say about the game's presentation. So for graphics, I would give it a 4 out of 5. To me, Vampyr is the perfect example of too much of a good thing. In trying to make this extensive, filled world, the developers just went a little too far, and the game lasts too long. There's too much talking, and it just gets a little too convoluted and tedious. It started as a unique and interesting idea, but by the end it was just a slog. I didn't care, I just wanted to be done with it. Now, if you're into the idea of talking to all these people and scouring every building for collectibles to then go back and talk to those people more because you've unlocked a new dialogue option, this is the game for you. It definitely does it better than any other game I've played. But for the average player, I think that the game overstays its welcome. And I think that because so much is hidden behind those collectibles and hidden dialogue options, that the game on its own is not engaging enough. I don't see the average player enjoying this game as much. So for a final rating, I would give Vampyr a 3 out of 5 with a value of about $10. I got it in the Humble Monthly Bundle. I think that was an okay value. For the average person, I don't think it's a game that you will start and play all the way through to completion. Take that as you will. Maybe, again, you'll love it. If how I've described it works for you, then you will love this game because it's done very well. There's just too much of it, and it lasts too long. So what do you think? Have you played Vampyr? Do you enjoy being a vampire? Does this make you respect vampires more? Let me know down in the comments. Please like the video, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Follow me on Twitch so you can watch me play these games in real time. We also been doing some tier lists and other things. What other games do you want me to play? Leave a comment. I'll consider it. I've got thousands to play through. We've got the backlog series going strong. Go check those out, and I'll see you guys with the next video.